Welcome to the show. I'm Doug Johnson, and this is The Business of Life. During each show, we highlight a local personality who has something to say to our audience, something important to say, and also who is willing to share 3 strategies for success. So, today's guest is a toy expert, an author, a researcher, and a man of many talents. Michael Cohill is the face right now of the Akron Toy Marble Museum, and we'll talk more about that later. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you very
I'm
much.
So happy you're here.
It's good to see you again.
Well, we first met down in Howe Meadow, and
The farmer's market.
The farmer's market
Yes.
there, and you were surrounded by hordes of kids and a strange contraption.
Yeah.
And you told me at that point, you and I talked about the power of marbles.
Power of marbles.
And
That's-
unbelievable.
I like that.
So to our audience, yep, you heard me, right? Marbles. And we'll talk more about that later. Anyway, what were you doing there, Michael? What was this contraption?
So I run the American Toy Marble Museum, and we have a vendor's booth at the Countryside Conservancy Farmers Market in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And it's a way that I can just introduce marbles to people, show kids how to play marbles, and then highlight what the Marble Museum does.
So, Michael, why are marbles so important? I mean, from my research, my little bit of research, I understand they've been around for centuries. But recently there's been a tie-in with Akron, and now you're involved. Why are marbles so important, and why should we, even as adults maybe, think about the importance of marbles?
So, marbles are the most popular toy in the world.
Okay.
There are 250 million little kids playing with marbles today in China. 250 million kids playing marbles today in India. 250 million kids playing marbles in Africa. 200 billions of marbles are made and sold every day of the year. So, and it's always been this way. It's demographically driven. They are the cheapest toy.
Okay.
So,
Okay. And they're not electronic.
and you don't require batteries.
Okay.
Right. And they're old. So, with the local history, why Akron? So, the first mass-produced toy was a marble made in Akron.
Okay.
Back then, they were made out of clay. Akron had a large clay industry at the time, and the fellow who set up this business, he was a good marbles player, and he figured if I can make them, I can sell them because everybody wants them. They were all being imported back in the 1870s, and so this turned out to be a huge, profitable industry.
And you told me that there were a number of marble manufacturers in Akron.
Right. So the first to manufacture, his name was Samuel Dyke, and he later became a millionaire selling marbles. And a millionaire in the 1890s, that was a lot of money before income tax. So all these other fellows were like, yeah, we'll open our own marble factory and we'll become millionaires too. And so in total, there were 34 marble factories in the greater Akron area. They made clay marbles, glass marbles, handmade glass marbles, machine-made glass marbles, and stone marbles in Boston. It's National Park area.
Right, sure.
Right
and we're
across
not
the
talking
river from Boston Mills.
Massachusetts. We're talking
Boston Mills, right.
Boston, Ohio.
Boston, Ohio.
Okay.
Right, just down
in the valley
from here. On the other side of Akron, at the same time, there were fellows looking for new uses for rubber. And so they were like, well, if we could mass-produce some rubber toy, we too could be millionaires. So, yeah. And in total, there have been over 250 toy companies in the greater Akron area. Most of those made rubber toys.
Okay.
And there's still major toy companies here today. This is not just ancient history. There's future here. Little Take, Step 2. Maple City is still the world's largest manufacturer of rubber balloons. And then there are all these companies that service those companies.
And marbles were some of the first.
They were the first.
So, really important question.
Yes.
Do you play marbles?
All the time.
All the time.
Every day.
Now, for our audience who maybe have forgotten because they did it as a child, how many years ago, or they've never experienced marbles, real quickly, what are the rules of the game? How do you play?
Oh, so it's always been a children's game.
Right.
These rules and the games were never written down. I mean, this was a game that was being developed in a neighborhood of, the oldest one may have been 10 years old, the youngest was 4, and an 8-year-old would teach the 4-year-old how to play.
Right.
And generation after generation of 4-year-olds to 10-year-olds. And none of them wrote down these rules. So they're just, it's like a series of calls.
Okay.
But it all starts off with this. Yes, I am a small toy manufacturer. This is the size of my toys. But you have to know how to hold and shoot a marble.
Uh-huh.
And if you know this,
right,
and it takes 30 seconds to learn how to do this, then wow, you are a marbles player. And you can play any of the games. And it's an extraordinary amount of fun if you know how to do this. And it can compete with the toys that use batteries, and it can compete with the internet.
Well, and it's very interesting. My wife and I, years ago, when we had lots of nieces and nephews that were about this high, my wife believed that, okay, we're going to do old-fashioned toys or books. So we did the old non-battery powered toys and puzzles and that kind of thing. They were loved because it took some brain power and stimulation. Now, I'm not knocking all the electronic toys,
No.
but I'm here to say some of those toys, and obviously like marbles, just fascinate kids. And I bet that if you were in a group of adults and brought out the marbles and said, okay, let's start a game, I bet that you'd get a group of people down on the floor.
Yeah. Especially if they're senior citizens like myself who played when they were kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, and there is a cutoff date. About the late 50s, early 60s, there were all these other toys out there. There were other activities like Little League, and we were a much more affluent society. So, the toy that cost a penny, the bag of marbles that cost a nickel, that wasn't such a big deal anymore. Whereas before, if you had a penny, and you wanted to buy a toy, this was it.
That was it.
You get a handful of marbles for a penny.
So, Michael, obviously you're an expert in marbles and toys. What's your backstory? How did you get started in all this? Because I understand you're an artist.
Yes,
How did you get from there and art school to marbles?
Walt Disney sent me through art school in Los Angeles, and I came out. I'm a painter, and I've drawn and painted almost every day of my life since I was 7 years old. But so waiting for the paint to dry in the studio, and I had a rubber ball and stuff, and I just invented a toy, and it turned out to be quite popular. And so I said, I'll go start manufacturing them. This would be great. Had I known more about business at the time,
that's often the case. Yeah.
But I did, and
you're great at making widgets, but it's the back end that gets you all the time.
Absolutely, it's the paperwork.
Yeah.
So we needed larger quarters. Immediately needed hire more people. Eventually, I ended up leasing an old factory building by the University of Akron, and we started finding marbles all around the place.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out this was an old marble factory. So here I was making toys in an old toy factory.
Right.
And so I started to do some research, and we kept digging up beautiful old marbles.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we went around to the professional historians in town, and they all basically were, I don't think they ever made marbles in Akron, and
Kind of a hidden secret.
it's because this was about kid stuff, you know. I mean, it's not important, like making rubber tires.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
which, yes, that was very important. The toy industry today is larger than the rubber tire industry, just as a note.
Mm-hmm.
But this old toy factory turned out to be the oldest still standing toy factory in the world.
Jeez.
And it was largely intact because they put siding on the outside and drywall on the inside and just kind of preserved everything in between, which was these giant, beautiful windows and the clapboarding, and I mean, it was nice. The marble works of the M.F. Christensen and Son Company. Mr. Christensen patented the process for making a perfect sphere, and he received a grounded patent for that, meaning that he then, for the period of his patent, he owned the rights to all sphere making.
So
it was quite a valuable.
Marbles was one thing, but
yes, and the most valuable was to make steel balls, ball bearings, and with now uniform and solid, unbreakable ball bearings, that allowed Mr. Ford to make automobiles, the Wright brothers to make airplanes, and it's the reason we're no longer walking around anymore.
Yeah.
We're riding and flying and boating because of ball bearings. Right. That's pretty fascinating. Mr. Christensen was a brilliant man and recognized by all at his time.
so then you took that information, the research that you did, and eventually opened a marble museum.
Right. So I started to do this historic research about the old marble factory, and I kept finding other marble works in the old newspapers. And this is marble works, and this is a marble works, and some of these marble works made funerary objects. They made tombstones. It was like, no, that's not. So, but in total, there were 34 marble factories. They made clay marbles to begin with. That was earthenware, stoneware, porcelain. Then they started making handmade glass marbles. Then machine-made glass marbles, and also the stone marbles at the Akron Stone Marble Company, which is down in Boston.
Okay.
By Boston Mills. And in the process, you know, we started this museum because we were going to these sites where we knew these factories were, and lo and behold, you're digging up marbles there. And then we would find out who owned that company, and I would go to the telephone book. There used to be these great big thick books that had listings of everybody's name with numbers after it. That's a telephone
Michael,
book.
You're telling your age now. Yeah,
we
really.
would go through this. It's like, I'm looking for a gentleman by the name of Jake Brown. Could he have been your great-grandfather? And it was like, yeah.
Neat.
And he had a marble factory, and he left a chest here. Come on over and see the chest, and there are photographs in it and patents, and there's, you know, wonderful stories.
Yeah.
Wonderful historical stories.
Well, and then you put this all together into a museum.
Yes. So we now have the world's largest publicly held collection of marbles. We have an extraordinary archives, only one of its kind, on the origins and birth of the global toy industry. And we do the Akron District. We brought back the Akron District Marbles Tournament. We teach children how to play. big groups, Cub Scout groups, school groups, to, this is, you hold your hand like this, and you go like that.
Right.
So
yep.
and it takes 30 seconds to teach a kid how to
Yep.
play marbles, and once he knows how to do that, boy, it's a great game.
So for our audience, there will be Michael's contact information online.
Right.
So if your group wants to contact Michael,
Yes.
you can do that. So Michael, you started this museum, and there was a physical presence for a while. And now talk with us about the future of the museum, because I just think this is fascinating.
So I've been doing this for 30 years now. So, and we started the museum in the old marble factory.
Right.
So the old building was leveled, and it's now a gravel parking lot. But then, so we were there for a number of years. Then we spent 15 years at Lock 3 Park in downtown Akron, which was also the site of an old marble factory, American Marble and Toy Manufacturing. And we did archaeological excavations of the park before they planted the grass, and we found extraordinary artifacts. Again, it's this story that keeps repeating.
And one of those toys, and kind of jumping around here, but one of those toys was a little blue Santa Claus.
Akron has its own Santa Claus. So the world's first three-dimensional image of a Santa Claus, we discovered it in the old marble works of the American Marble and Toy Manufacturing Company. And he's 2.5 inches tall, little figurine, and he was in relatively good condition. We found almost all of them were broken, but we found one in almost perfect condition. And then we decided, as a fundraiser for the museum, that we would reproduce him, make a mold, make a model, make the mold, fire it, glaze it, just the exact same way that they did it in the 1880s. And this manufacturing technique, we did not know how they did it, but the way we figured out, it turns out that was the way they did it.
Well, that's really
because
neat.
it allowed it to be mass produced.
And again, these are still for sale.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
in fact, July. This is July. We have sold lots of blue Santas in July.
Christmas in July.
Christmas in July.
Right.
And that's a thing.
So that to me is just fascinating that Akron had all of this, kind of lost it, and now you've brought it back.
Right.
I think it's so important to understand our history, and then to go forward with it. Michael, talk with us, if you would, and you and I discussed this a little bit earlier, but you've been very successful at all of this stuff that you've done, the toy that you developed, the marbles, the Marble Museum, Blue Santa, as I call them. We normally talk about 3 strategies for success, and today we're going to do a little bit different here, and we're going to talk about if you want to be in the right place at the right time,
Yes.
and if you want to become a toy entrepreneur, here are 3 strategies for success. So the first one that you mentioned to me that is so important is to know that you are in the right place at the right time. So can you enlarge on that a little bit?
So if you came to me and said, I've got a great idea, and this happens,
Okay.
I got a great idea for a new toy, and what should I do? Move to Summit County, Ohio.
Right.
We have this extraordinarily long history of toy manufacturing here. This is the birthplace of the global toy industry. It's all about mass production, and there is still an industry here, and there is institutional knowledge. There is the know-how, the legal, the marketing, the manufacturing, and most importantly, it's the manufacturing. We have great toy manufacturers here, still today.
So the second point then would be, okay, now you know that you're in the right spot. You know there is help out there, resources out there. You said do your research.
Right. So like I was going into the old newspapers to read about the old marble factories. The other place that you research is the patent record. And it's real easy to do that today with the internet. When I first started doing this, you had to go to a repository library and go through this one by one, year by year, in their old books they called the Gazettes. All of a sudden you realize that you're gaining all this knowledge about what was out there, what was fun, could still be fun, what is still fun. There is a intrinsic play value for every toy. And if you cue into that, right, then you can have a hit toy. And so you have to do your research. And the patent record is a good place to start. Eventually, if you stumble onto something extraordinary, you too can get a patent on your toy. And you've already done all the patent research, so it's going to be cheaper when you go and visit the patent attorney.
The attorney,
yes.
right. Okay, so now you've done your research, and then the third step is to go and talk with all of the toy experts in Akron.
And that's another option here, because you're in an area where there are toy manufacturers. And as I've come to understand, it's a group of people that are so willing to share their experience, and they appreciate people who have that passion of creating something new. And you know, it's like, oh, so show me your toy. Let's see what you're doing.
Sure,
and
the interest is there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if they like it, they may license it from you. They may give you a suggestion. They may say, come back next year with another idea. But they are the people that have been in the industry. They know and understand the industry. They could just say, so give this guy a call. Here's his phone number, and he's over, down southern part of the county. He's up in Cuyahoga County, something, Ashland, Ohio. But
nice.
the human knowledge and this is it's here. It's here. It's readily available. Take advantage of it.
Well, so that's talking about the future of someone who perhaps wants to produce a toy.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the future of the Akron Toy Marble Museum,
Okay.
because you are doing some really exciting things with that. And tell us about that.
So about 3 years ago, we left Lac 3 Park in downtown Akron, and we are in the process of moving a couple blocks up the street with the Akron-Summit County Public Library, main library on Main Street. They have an area that was once a very beautiful garden, and it was the infrastructure they built in wheelchair accessible ramps that went up the hill, and very nice. And then budget cuts, and the flowers started to die, and the bushes lost. There's a dead tree there, and so we came up with this idea. The idea is to make a sculpture garden of giant outdoor marble sculptures, inventions, marble works. And the idea is that you put marbles into them and they roll around with the physics of gravity, and that's it. They make noise. They do. It's an amusement.
Well, and some of those sculptures are installed already, but there are more to come.
Yes, this is a process, and it's always takes more time and costs more money than you first expect, or you'd never get into it in the first place.
Sure.
Your passion drives you, so that's why it's coming up there. But so it's a work in progress. We have some freestanding pieces up right now. There will be others, and opportunities for youth to help build this with us, and it's a lot of fun. We would encourage you to come by and visit and watch how it grows over time. And
tell us about, if it's not a proprietary thing, the big sculpture that you're doing that's going to cover the hillside, and you're working as an art project, and
yes,
it's just so neat that you're getting all these folks involved.
So So a lot of these, there's a toy called a marble railway, and that's a patent term. 1884, this toy was invented. It's simply a piece of wood that has a track that goes in a Z shape. They had, that's 1884. The last one was patented in August of last year. It's still, the play value is still the same. It's just a more complicated and expensive marble railway today.
Right.
We have a concept of what's called a tip toy, where you have a milk bottle with a hole, and you drop a marble in it, and it tips, and we'll drop into another one, and it tips, and it goes downhill. And as it tips, it makes a little chirping sound, and these are going to be painted and designed into bugs and birds and fish by middle school kids with paint and glitter and feathers and fins. And
You know, that is just so interesting. And for our audience, you're right. Keep watch at the Akron Library because things are happening there.
bring your own marbles. You can buy marbles at the library, or if necessary, you can check out a bag of marbles at the circulation desk at the library.
All right. So the power of marbles. Michael, we have to close it off. This has been fascinating. And I hope people check it out and start to play marbles.
Power of marbles.
Thank you very
much.
Michael. My college roommate often sends me pictures of crazy things that he has seen. Recently, he sent me a photo of a sign attached to the side of a tattoo parlor saying, "Tattoos while you wait." So tell me, am I going to chop off my arm and leave it so it can be tattooed? Seriously?